That's amazing. So I would say the first thing is to understand that I am on a mission to provide Black, Brown, and rural kids with early exposure to the skills required to have a successful tech career. That's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm also very passionate about um, making tech make sense for marginalized communities. A lot of times when tech is created, it's created not always with marginalized communities in mind in the beginning, but often our groups are that spur on those businesses. And so that's me as far as what I'm very passionate about. A little bit about my background. I am a uh, homeschool high school dropout who went to college, got everything together, and got his PhD by the age of 26, and was very technical all along the way. Some of it was happenstance, some of it was just blessings and as well as luck. And since then, I have worked as a consultant for startups and small businesses. And right now, my firm focuses on basically helping companies get repeat sales from their customers. Sorry, get repeat sales from their customers in an innovative way, utilizing emerging technology like voice apps, AI, and things of that nature. And so my background is very eclectic. I've done a lot of various technological research and scientific research. And I think the main thing we're talking about here is the work that I do with students, particularly ages 10 and up, helping them get into tech. And that's just been very passionate because I grew up in a very small town and I created the program I wish I had had when I was about 10, 11, or 12. Oftentimes, we don't know people who are in the software development side of tech. We know people that are in IT or in repair and things of that nature. And so, my goal is just to be everybody's.
Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle. Audio Jungle.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of J1Q. Just one question. That podcast, as it says, is dedicated to inspiration, education, and all around truth about things in life that help out and inspire primarily the minority community. And thank you very much, Minority Report, for being a sponsor of this episode. We appreciate everything that you are out there doing. Today's guest, ladies and gentlemen, very excited to have on because we're going to be talking about a couple of things. One of them is the importance of students getting into tech. I've been telling you so long, technology is like one of the things that no matter what happens in our culture and our country, tech is always going to be there. Another thing is we're going to talk about how pretty much anyone else can get into tech and then maybe tease you with a few things of how you can implement some of these options into your community. So, without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let's get our guests ready to come on up here. I want you all to give a big round of applause for our guest, Dr. Paul McNeil. Yes, sir. How are you doing today?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for having me here on J1Q. I'm very excited to be here.
Love it. Thank you so much. And I'm going to tell you truthfully, this is a subject that I am really excited to hear about and to learn about because I've always been interested in tech. I just don't have enough. Um, let's see how I want to put my ADHD kicks in a little bit, so I don't have the ability to sit still and learn it a little too much. I studied a little bit of it in college and intro into programming, and they started talking about zeros and ones, and I saw
Yeah.
how much work went into it, and just to program something so you could click one link, and I was like, "Yeah, let me get out this class." So,
I
but
love it. No, I love it.
before
I
we
love it.
begin, what I want to do is I want you to take a second just to kind of tell the listeners and even the viewers that's going to be watching this a little bit about who you are because they're going to be able to see a bio on the screen, read, whatever's written there. But I love for them to hear the authentic story. So give a little background about who you are, why you got into tech, and what drives you to want to continue pursuing that. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you so much. That's amazing. So I would say the first thing is to understand that I am on a mission to provide Black, Brown, and rural kids with early exposure to the skills required to have a successful tech career. That's something that I'm very passionate about. I'm also very passionate about um, making tech make sense for marginalized communities. A lot of times when tech is created, it's created not always with marginalized communities in mind in the beginning, but often our groups are that spur on those businesses. And so that's me as far as what I'm very passionate about. A little bit about my background. I am a uh, homeschool high school dropout who went to college, got everything together, and got his PhD by the age of 26, and was very technical all along the way. Some of it was happenstance, some of it was just blessings and as well as luck. And since then, I have worked as a consultant for startups and small businesses. And right now, my firm focuses on basically helping companies get repeat sales from their customers. Sorry, get repeat sales from their customers in an innovative way, utilizing emerging technology like voice apps, AI, and things of that nature. And so my background is very eclectic. I've done a lot of various technological research and scientific research. And I think the main thing we're talking about here is the work that I do with students, particularly ages 10 and up, helping them get into tech. And that's just been very passionate because I grew up in a very small town and I created the program I wish I had had when I was about 10, 11, or 12. Oftentimes, we don't know people who are in the software development side of tech. We know people that are in IT or in repair and things of that nature. And so, my goal is just to be everybody's big cousin, young uncle who can come in and help them transition into tech or get started into tech. So that's just a quick nutshell about me.
Yes, I absolutely love it. And there's a couple things you said in there that just resonated with me. And one was like you created something that you would understand, right? And there's a quote, something I'm sure I'm not getting it all the way right, but it says, "Be the change in the world that you thought you should be," or something to that effect. And that kind
Hmm.
of reminded me of that. Like, hey, I wish this was around when I was younger. Then other people are probably feeling that. So let me create something that
Hmm.
they could be within the same age, and I absolutely love that. And another part of that was that when you were speaking of, we don't, basically it goes into what I say often, we don't know what we don't know. And
Hmm.
so these things are created primarily not for marginalized communities, but we need to know about them
Hmm.
because that's the way the world is going. Everything
Hmm.
now from this new AI stuff that's coming through, and I'm not too old of a fogey yet where I'm so opposed to learning new things, right? Like
Okay.
I'm getting into my business and I'm like, well, this social media thing, I got to learn it. So I
Yep.
need to start researching, right? I'm not like, get off my grass, kids. I'm not that old yet. So let's talk about, how do you first approach maybe a community center, or do you go to schools, or where do you approach? I guess we can kind of go to first, where do you approach, and then how do you approach that center or that place to implement a program such as this where you can start it for them?
Sure. So, generally, honestly, I have just been networking. It started off very, very organically. So, what happened was I have a friend who was a principal at a small private school out in California a few years ago. We were just catching up from undergrad. We hadn't spoken in years. And I shared with her some of the work that I had done for the inner city in Nashville, where I was living at the time during grad school. And I said, hey, I did these coding programs for inner city high school kids, and it was really cool. And we are just talking about that. And she said, well, I uh, am principal of an elementary school. Do you think you could do something like this for my students, maybe the fifth to eighth graders? And when we, kind of got down to it, they weren't able to pay for me to come out and stay there for a whole week to run the camp as I did when I was in grad school. Um, but I had the idea, hey, why don't I make some videos and work with your parent teacher volunteers to get this program going? And so from there, we did the first run. This is probably back in 2018, 2019, I think. And it went really well. And after that, it just started to be a word of mouth thing. So generally, I know someone or someone has heard about what I'm doing, and they reach out. Or if there is a program already, like you said, a nonprofit or a community program, what I do is I reach out and we just have a conversation about what their goals are for the programs they're doing for their young people. And then from there we're able to create some kind of a partnership, because the goal is to make sure that we are exposing our kids to coding, but that it makes sense for that community. As I don't live in every community, I love to work with those who are, so that we can shape it to make sense. So we might have some of the basic coding things be around, have more of an entrepreneurial slant to it, because that's what the students that this particular organization is working for. Sometimes those students are more um, they're more ecologically minded, and so then maybe we make the course have a slant towards activism, towards going green and things of that nature. And that's the beauty of coding, is that it doesn't have to just be one thing. you don't have to make you don't only have to make an app that is going to be social media. You don't only have to make an app that's going to be about games. It can be about solving problems that make sense or that are important to you. And in the case of the students, we're working to those kids, to those students. And that, when you have that tying piece, that's what makes learning code that much more fun, that much more engaging, especially when you're looking at younger students, is having something they can tie to that they already love and say, oh, this is helping me do this other greater purpose.
Yeah, that is so like hitting me right. I call it my feelers, right? Because my son, he's 8 years old, and
Hmm.
we have a podcast together, he and I, that's called ADHD is my superpower, because his is
Hmm.
a little bit more off the charts. Because, but I found a way to use a tool of technology to help him. And I see this so much being an important factor, because that is what kids nowadays do. If they're not on their phone doing something, then I don't know what else they could be doing, right? But the important fact of what you said to me there is, it can tie into something that they are passionate about. It doesn't have to just be, for an example, when I was going to college and I was learning, it was just math. It was just, but
Yep.
like you said, it could be something with the green. It could be something with activism, society. It could be them building a app to just help them solve a Rubik's cube. But that it plants the seeds in their minds that they can be more than just uh, the basketball player.
Yep.
Sports is the only way out, or something like that. And that for me is what I love pushing, to let people know that, hey, we've got to change our mindset. That's the main thing for me, mindset. Because, so was this something that you started off as a kid yourself? I know you said you wanted to build this as a to understand it as a kid when you were there, but when did you really get into this, or who helped nourish you to guide you towards this?
Sure. So I will say there are maybe two answers to that question. The first, as far as getting started, I actually started programming without knowing that I was programming at probably around the age of 10 or 11. And so I don't know if, uh, for those of us who are older, Toys R Us, okay, Toys R Us was a magical place. And at the time, VTech used to have these toy computers, and every year my parents would get me the latest one. That was just kind of, I was always kind of into computers, but it was usually trivia and little games and stuff. And one particular year, um, they had basic programming on there, but I didn't know what basic was. And then they had a little booklet that came with it, and you could follow the directions. And then you could print out like an hourglass, or you could make like a calculator or do these basic things. And so I started then. I didn't realize I was programming at the time. I thought I was just following directions. And I remember I started, okay, if I can do this as like a calculator, I could use this to make something to teach my little brother multiplication tables. And it was really funny that you asked that because a little while ago, I actually found my notebook from when I was like 10, 11, where I had scribbled out like the little basic code on how he could be able to enter in the response to like, I think the five multiplication tables or something he was doing. He was really young at the time. So I would say that was my first instance of it. And then, I did that for a while. Of course, you outgrow toys. I don't do it anymore. I don't meet anybody who's coding or anything like that. And then you fast forward to college. Just before I went to college, um, I knew that Bill Gates did software. I didn't really know what that meant. And of course, if you know the MySpace, if you're part of that MySpace generation, you did a little bit with your MySpace profile, HTML. And so I thought, hey, how hard could this coding thing be? And I put a few different majors in a hat. I pulled them out, and I did best 3 out of 5 or 5 out of 7. And computer science kept coming up, and I was like, you know what? Let's do that. And so then I started really coding when I got to college, which a majority of Black and Brown students don't start coding until their freshman year of college, whereas their counterparts will generally start coding around 10, 11, or 12. So I kind of straddle the fence on both of those. And so that's why I said I kind of had two phases or two parts to that answer.
Man, this is like taking you down memory lane part of it too. You found an old book, scrolling out, and so you're like, man, and that's a great story because I could see someone kind of following that footstep of saying 20 years from now, however, long it
Hmm.
is, to them thinking back, man, that's where let me go search my old notebook in the
Yeah.
attic or something and find it. And I absolutely love that because the main thing for me of this is my whole purpose when I started my podcast was I wanted to give anyone whose voice didn't feel like it was being heard an opportunity to hear knowledge from other people. And to be able to have someone listening to this, a parent, or maybe they're driving and some young kid is in the car and they're like, what? I love math or I love something, it could spark that little flame into them.
Hmm.
And that, for me, that is exactly why I love doing it. So, what would you say the importance of starting? I don't want to say young or at a certain age, but just because, like you said, the counterparts are starting younger, and most
Yeah.
black and brown kids starting a little bit later. But I also think that, and I don't want to go too far off it, but I also think that's
No
part
problem.
of culturalistic, um, a a little bit of culturalistic in there because and I'm speaking for me primarily, but as a black man, a black community, we don't put an emphasis on being intelligent or being it's a bad thing, right? Or it's and we've got to, that's what I'm saying, we've got to change that mindset to say absolutely, I want you to go and do something like that. What do you feel the importance of starting at that point or getting, like you said, your parents bought you computers, probably didn't know they were getting you, into
Right. They
that.
were just buying the little computer toy. Yeah, for sure.
Yes. Yes. Instead of just the next game just to play, and it's one of the small
Yeah.
things we do. For an example, my wife and I, we're both primarily in real estate, and we purchased land for our son for his birthdays, right?
Yeah.
So, one day when he's 20, 30 something years old, someone comes on that phone and say, "Hi, we want to build a shopping mall here, but you own this land."
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
working to start that. But what's the importance you think of starting them at a fairly right age?
I think there's so many different things. There's so many things come to mind. The first, a quote from this professor, education professor, doctor. I can't think of his name right now. It starts with a K, and he used to say that what you do most is that what you do best. And I think that your to your point about our community, we often are looking at that entertainment and we're looking at athletics as our way out of these hood environments or out of poverty, or just not even if we're not and we're middle class or whatever the case is, we look at these as this is what is to be desired as far as a career. And so we see it over and over again. And so then we think this is the only way that this can happen. So that's the first thing. And then you mentioned being really young. One other thing I wanted to throw in there is this may be a little controversial, but I don't know if you remember the TV program A Different World. Uh,
Yes.
and so, okay, so if you find me on my social media, one cool blurred, I call myself the real life Dwayne Wayne. So as a small child, when I was like really small, those are the types of shows that I would watch. Of course, with everything that is going on now, those shows aren't always, they're pitched. There's that negative connotation or that association with everything that happened with Cosby since then. But that particular program, A Different World, I used to love Dwayne Wayne, and he was an engineer. And as I got older, I realized that I kind of followed his path. He was a math major when he started at Hillman. He then went into engineering when he did his graduate school. He was always giving back, and those kinds of shaped it. And that was from a very young age, 3, 4, 5. I didn't even realize that I was soaking that up. And so I think as you said, the earlier you can begin, what happens is it just becomes a part of that subconscious, that mission, those values. And then if you can at an early age, 10, 11, 12, expose your child to this. Everybody is not going to be a programmer, and that's fine. That's not what I'm saying. Some people are meant to be amazing entertainers and athletes, but I believe that everyone should know that they have the option. They should understand what it takes, and so they can make an informed decision and an informed choice. And so that's where I think the advantage of starting early comes from. And then you also just have the advantage of pure time, right? The longer you're doing anything, they say that 10,000 hours makes an expert. The reason that we're able to see a lot of these big tech companies that the younger people have started, in their 20s and 30s. You look at Zuckerberg, he dropped out of college. You look at Bill Gates, he dropped out of college. You look at Steve Jobs, they dropped out of college. Well, if you've been coding or doing anything, honestly, from the age of 10 until you're 18 or 19, you've got 8 to 9 years in the game, right? Where you weren't worried about bills, you weren't worried about where your food was coming from. And if you spent all of your time because you found out that you love this thing at 10, 11, 12, if you spend every waking moment between then and when you leave your parents' house doing it, you can drop out of college because you've had an entire career worth of time doing all kinds and all manner of coding and programming. And so it gives you a leg up, but it also allows you to get the expertise needed so that if college isn't the right fit for you, you still understand and have this skill set that allows you to contribute and add value to various businesses and individuals in a way that might allow you to write your own script, and start your own company, be a freelance, work remotely, travel, and a lot of the things that we generally don't associate with young black and brown, young adults and teenagers.
It is speaking the truth, ladies and gentlemen, because it is something that I love and I preach to my youngest all the time. He's 8, and I say, hey, look, you either going to work for someone or have someone work for you or
Right.
whatever. But I remember seeing something one time where guy said, uh, someone said to him, "Oh, that's a nice car," and he said, yes, if you continue working hard and doing everything you're doing, I will be able to buy another one next year." And it was at that moment it hit me, and I'm like, "What?" I was like, "He's gonna say you can get one." He's like, "No, actually, they're never gonna pay you what you're worth or more than them, and so
Hmm.
forth." And that's why we always tell my son, "Hey, always look for opportunity." So when you're speaking about, hey, they may drop out of college because they've been doing it for so long, that's why we're prepping him. And
Hmm.
he kills me because he came to us the other day and he said, "Dad, I want to go clean the backyard or something. Can I get $7?" And I was like, "Yeah, look at this mindset." And then I was like, "How about 3?" And he's like, "Okay." I was like, "Okay, now we got to work on negotiations."
Yeah, yeah, I gotta work on the business side. But I think I wanna commend you for that because I think that that's something, that we can do for our kids, which is to encourage and nurture these things because, some of us are in homes where, or grew up in homes where that kind of thinking wasn't encouraged, right? The
Yeah.
first response would have been, no, I'm not paying you to do work. This is what you're here to do. I allow you to live in my house and we have these types of things, not
Yeah.
realizing that we are reinforcing an employee mindset in our kids. And
Yeah.
so I do not have children of my own. So just a disclaimer, when I say things, it's based on observation and anecdotal, evidence. And I like to put that out there because I think that there is a difference once you have a child and when you watch other people who have children.
Mhm.
But that is a pattern that I can see and that I experienced. My parents were not entrepreneurial at all. And they were very much get the job, work, keep your head down, and work your way up. And here's the reality. Like my mom was someone who did not want to be an entrepreneur at all. That was not anything she cared about. She would say, I don't want to deal with the extra stress and pressure. I want to go to work and I want to go home. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, my thing with early exposure to code, tech entrepreneurship, and the like is that our kids should be able to know what it takes to do it, to know that they could do it if they wanted to, and then to make an informed decision about what they want to do. Everyone's not meant to be an entrepreneur. That's fine, but know that what it takes. Know, hey, this is just where I live. And so I think that is um probably one of the biggest things that I like to push, um or my biggest opinion when it comes to this kind of thing when talking with parents about how do I guide my child, how do we put these things together for them. It's, hey,
Yeah.
you might put something together, you may invest this 6 months program or a 3 month program, and they might decide, you know what, I know how to do it, I'm good at it, but I just don't like it. But it's the same as when you put them into football, it's the same as when you put them into ballet. You expose them and then you see if something catches that spark. And
Right.
my goal is that if you put your child into a program and you see that that spark is for coding, we can help you and your student uh, get to the next level, through my lessons learned, through what I've been through what I wish I knew at various points, putting that together in a program. That's kind of where my passion comes from when it comes to helping parents and communities build these kinds of programs.
And I love it because that passion is what drives it. And it's so funny as you're talking, I'm thinking back and I'm like, yep, that's my son. My son, he has probably zero athletic ability. I coach him in his basketball. We tried soccer. We tried everything. But it's for me, it's all about nourishing his drive. I don't care if he scores a point, he's smiling, he's happy. He pretty much knows that that's not his genre, but he just
Hmm.
loves hanging out with me. We love doing those things together. And even to the point of when at school, he'll say, Dad, can I wear mismatched shoes today? Go for it, son. And then I'll explain to him, hey, some kids might say some things. Just be prepared. But I'm
Hmm.
not going to crush his spirit and soul because that may be the one thing that sparks him when he's older to say, you know what? I got an idea for an invention or I got an idea for A, B, or C, but I could have taken that from him by just saying, no, you can't do coding. It's not going to take you anywhere. No, we've
Yeah.
got to change our mindset, people. Just because our parents, grandparents, or whomever, it wasn't around for them, we've got to be able to adjust with the time. And ladies and gentlemen, I want y'all to make sure y'all stick around because Dr. Paul is going to throw out a little teaser of an idea because we talked about having a second portion coming up, and you guys make sure you want to stick because this is going to be something you want to hear. So we're going to kind of start to dwindle it down. So let's talk about how um, pretty much anyone can start getting it. We've talked primarily about students and younger people, but what if there's, maybe a seasoned, I'll use that word, a seasoned
Yes.
aged person out there, and they're saying, well, that's good, but you know what? That's for the young people. What
Right.
can they probably even start to maybe take them down that road?
Sure. No, that's a great question. And I get asked this question quite a bit. Um, I don't know if you all have seen or if you've seen the movie Hidden Figures. And there's the I think the B storyline of the secretary pool. And at some point, a lot of the I believe the black secretaries started to learn how to input things into the computer through reading the book and studying and getting together. And that's what helped them near the end of the movie, that's what helped them to keep their jobs when they started saying, "Hey, we're doing calculations that we need to utilize the computer," and they were able to still have that job security. And so, the first thing I would say is, it doesn't matter what age you are; it's always a good time to add another tool to the tool belt. And so, I would say the first thing that I would suggest you do is assess your skill set and what are you already an expert at. And that's whatever you've been doing for the last 10 years, 5 years, 20 years. That's something that is important. And if you are looking at something like Chat GPT or something like that, that makes you think, oh, my job's going to be gone, flip that on its head and think, how can I utilize this to make something that will make my job more efficient? Okay, so I think that that's the first thing. You have to assess what you're already good at. And then the second thing is to do a deep dive into the various um, careers that are possible within technology. For instance, there is automation. A lot of automation, a lot of programming is really making very detailed to-do list. If you know how to make a checklist for your job, if you have to go in every morning and turn the lights on and then do this and then set this up and then set this up, you can program. You have to learn the language and the way to give the computer the instructions, but the fact that you already know how to go through a checklist, you already know how to train younger employees, you can program. A computer is really like teaching a 2-year old how to tie their shoes. Yes, you have to give them each step by step. The difference is that once you learn how to give that instruction correctly, it will run it for quite some time and much faster without you having to think about it. So those are the two things I would say. Assess your personal skill set and then look to see what are some of the technological things that are happening around you through Google, YouTube, what's going on in your field that's technological, and see if you can find an in. um, I know automation is one place where people are able to transition really well. UX design is another, and UX design, that's user experience design. And what user experience design does is it's just making sure that the buttons, that the text box on the app or the website makes sense to people for people to use, making it as easy to use a product as possible. And automation is, of course, how can we take very repetitive tasks that have to happen often across a large amount of data? How can we get this a computer to do some of that work so that our employees can focus on the bigger tasks? And so, if we look at technology as a tool and not as a substitute or replacement, the possibilities are endless.
Man, they're jumping the dimes, and I love it because I know sometimes people get into a point where they've been working that field 5, 10, 15 years and they feel there's nothing else out there for me, right?
Hmm.
We'll just take the knowledge you already know and then use it in a different way. And I love that.
That's it.
Where can people reach you? Maybe to ask you some more questions, to find out more about your programming. Do you
Sure.
have social media or anything where they can reach out and find you?
Absolutely. So I'm on Instagram and Twitter. I think there's a Facebook page as well. One Cool Blurred. That's OneCoolBlerd. Blurred is just black nerd smushed together. Blerd. And you can reach out at any time. If you don't mind, I'd love to just drop one or two more practical things um, for any parents that are interested in getting into the space, because I
Yes,
mentioned
go
like
for it.
assessing. And so there are several free programs that are available, and there are also some really good practical ones that are available as well. I have a program that gives parents and their one of their students an account in my program, where we onboard you from knowing nothing to understanding the software development lifecycle, to working towards an automation certification. And that's something that we're going to be dropping this year. And so, if you are interested in that, uh, for the listeners of J1Q, I definitely want to give you a free lesson. But there are other resources. There are things like um, free, I think it's called Free Code Camp. And there's also code.org, which has an amazing entry level for students. Adults can use it as well. Code.org. They have some free lessons. MIT App Inventor is another one that's really amazing and it's 100% free. And then you have paid options like Udacity. I love Udacity because it is very project based and it's often taught in collaboration with people who actually work at startups. You have my program. My program is going to have a little more mentorship piece than some of the other programs. You're going to get to sit with me or one of my team members, and we're going to have regular career consultations with you all, and making sure that we find something that help you find things that align with your current skill set in a way that makes sense. Um, and then again, if you're not working with me, Googling. I know Coursera has some programs as well, and so it's something where I will say this: you would make the investment on having your child go pro when the chances of that are like 1 in 30,000 or like 1 in 1 million to go pro in NBA and beyond, in the league. I think they said the stat is like 7 people, 7 new people pull into there's like 7 real slots every year. And so you would invest there. However, there are like a million unfulfilled software developer jobs. And so the chances of you or your child being able to get a software development job or something in tech is so high. And it does take some investment of time and a little bit of money, but it is so worth it to have options. And if you don't like it, that's fine as well. But just check it out so you have those options.
Love it, love it, love it. I tell you something really funny, really, ladies and gentlemen. I think this is how I came upon um, your work and everything. And you were talking about that stat. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, go to the
Hmm.
social media. There is a video. I don't recall exactly where I saw it from, but you were talking about this many students in basketball and 3,000 and this and that. And I was like, wow, it blew my mind. And I was like, I got to reach out to this gentleman. I
Yeah.
got to reach out. And I found Dr. McNeil. And it's so crazy because while you were talking, I brought down my son. He was upstairs watching TV, and this is him right here. Say hi, stand up so they can see you on camera. Come slide over just a little bit. There you go. This is my son right here.
Hey,
And
how's it
so,
going?
Good.
and this is our
Great.
little
Great to
thing.
meet you.
We enjoy reading
Nice to
Pi
meet you.
and
Okay.
the book of the numbers, and it's crazy because we study
Yeah.
um the Pi numbers, and people go like, what, you're crazy, but it's our little thing together that we bond. So I sincerely appreciate you dropping that knowledge, and reach out, parents, to Dr. McNeil. Even if it's, I always say, even if it's something that doesn't work for you directly, hey, maybe it could work for a family member. Maybe you have a niece or a nephew, you're like, you know what, my little niece, she is on it. Let me get this as a Christmas gift or something. Stop buying these just toys that they don't play with the next year. Invest, invest. So,
Best.
man,
Oh, I'm on YouTube as well. It might have been a YouTube video that you saw. I don't know. I think YouTube or Instagram. But yeah, that video. I know what you're talking about. That was a
yeah.
fun one to do for sure.
So, man, but do you want to kind of tease that little thing we were talking about in the beginning that could possibly happen
Sure.
on the next one, and let them know, and then we'll get ready to wrap this up.
Yeah, no problem. So we spoke a little bit about how is it that we can set up these programs in our communities for our students, where they're able to really be able to start a tech career and have a sustainable next steps forward. And so I've developed a 5 step, I call it the Acres framework. It's a 5 step approach, or 5 steps to building a program in your community, a coding program, even if you don't know how to code yourself. It's called the Acres framework. And those 5 steps are: ask questions, categorize, reach out and select, educate and sustain. And so uh, hopefully the next time I come on, we're able to kind of go through what that means and basically give everybody the ability to start hosting and holding their own coding programs in their communities, even if they don't have a technical background. If you're just very passionate about making sure that more students have early exposure to coding like I am, you definitely want to to check in and you don't want to miss it.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate that. I want to ask you to just hold it for 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and close things out and get these bills paid,
Sure.
and then I'm gonna come right back to you. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of J1Q. I also want to give a shout out to Fisk, which it was university, which was the first HBCU to compete in an NCAA university gymnastics event. They are located in Nashville, Tennessee, and they finished in fourth place in their first ever gymnastic event. And the college only got the gymnastic program a year prior. So within 1 year, they were competing at the NCAA at the HBCU. Thank you so very much to those ladies. And I think it was only the ladies that competed, but thank you so very much to them. And I sincerely appreciate that. And this episode, as always, is brought to you by The Hustle 1977. For those of you who grind, you deserve to relax. So why not relax with a glass of smooth tasting Hustle brand whiskey? Thank you to our sponsors there. We appreciate that. And as I always tell you, ladies and gentlemen, make sure you are out there living and looking for something more in life because you deserve it. And keep living while you are alive.
Thank you for listening to Just One Question. I know you enjoyed the show because you made it this far. If you want to hear more, subscribe, share, and don't forget to give us a 5-star review. Now, what's your one question?